For weeks, the Ministry of Interior was saying that its dispersal of the sit-in would be a very gradual process, that it would start with a siege, that it would allow safe exit, in particular for women and children, and that it would allow a very clear time frame so that all those protesters wanting to leave would be able to do so, and it could do so via a safe exit. But that's not what happened in reality. The Ministry of Interior deployed its riot police forces, and they moved in between 6:30 and 6:45 a.m. We've spoken to protester after protester who told us that they wanted to try and leave but were trapped because of gunfire coming from all directions.
There's no question that the Egyptian authorities used lethal force on a large scale when it dispersed the protest on August 14. Human Rights Watch researchers, when they visited the field hospital near the protest place, saw hundreds of bodies and injured, and most of them suffered from wounds from live ammunition.
To get to that medical hospital, you had to sprint across this road that I'm standing on, and you had to sprint because there was gunfire coming from this direction. What this meant is that ambulance workers couldn't come anywhere near the only hospital where victims of live bullet shots were being carried, and doctors in there told me that they didn't have the equipment to even be operating on these many critical cases, and they needed to move a lot of the injured to hospitals, but they couldn't because of lack of ambulance access. As our group ran out of the medical center around 4:30, one of the men standing with us as we ran across was shot, and a bullet grazed his head and he fell to the ground here.
One of the victims that we visited in a hospital later, he still had a bullet lodged into his head as evidenced by x-rays provided by his doctor.
One of the things we've documented over the years when the Egyptian riot police break up protests is that they often fire indiscriminately. They don't fire live ammunition only as strictly necessary to protect life.
Police authorities can use lethal force under certain circumstances. We know that some protesters threw rocks, we know that some protesters had firearms that they shot at police with, we know that police officers were killed, and these factors might have justified the use of limited lethal force in certain circumstances. But while the casualty number for police officers on that day was in the low dozens, the number of protesters killed were in the hundreds. And that is a very strong indication that police officers overreacted and that the use of force was excessive.
What we know from people who were in the Rabaa Medical Clinic at around 5 o'clock is that the police broke into the building and ordered everybody out. And they ordered people to leave behind the dead bodies. They could carry out some of the injured, but otherwise everybody had to evacuate the site. And some of the protesters told us that they'd heard that Brotherhood leaders had negotiated safe exit for them. And that's why the hundreds of remaining protesters, including the many women and children who'd been hiding in the mosque at that time, felt safe to leave the site. And that's basically how the sit-in ended. Day after day, we're seeing new street fights break out in different parts of the city in Cairo. The announcement by the Minister of Interior saying that they'd authorized the use of live ammunition to protect states' institutions is a very dangerous one, because it gives the police free rein to deal with any violence that may happen on the street over the next days by responding in their usual excessive and unrestrained manner. So over the next days, Egypt's military rulers have to rein in the police and should order accountability for the unlawful killings that have taken place over the last few days. Otherwise, there is little hope of preventing a further escalation of the situation.